My name is Lena, 23 years old from Nevada. I was scrolling through TikTok when I saw him. Same eyes, same smile, same dimple I thought was mine alone. At first, I thought it was coincidence. But what started as a message turned into a nightmare unraveling decades of betrayal, a stolen childhood, and a lie my family built everything on. This is the truth they never wanted us to find. Before we dive into the most shocking discovery of my life, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell. This story isn't just about family, it's about truth, revenge, and a system built on secrets. Let's uncover it together. It was one of those nights where sleep felt like a joke. The Nevada wind howled outside my window, brushing dry mesquite branches against the siding like skeletal fingers. I should have been studying. Instead, I was lying in bed, scrolling mindlessly through TikTok with the volume low and the screen turned halfway down. Then I saw him, a quick, unassuming clip, just 10 seconds long. A guy standing in front of an old gas station near Elko, the sunset flaring behind him like it was staged. He was talking about growing up in the foster system, something about never knowing who his real family was. Nothing fancy. But it wasn't the words that stopped me, it was his face, same dark eyes. Same sharp chin. Same lopsided grin that I'd always hated in my own reflection because it made me look smug when I wasn't. I sat up straight, the phone suddenly cold in my hands, his username at Lost Nevada Kid, real name in the comments, Danny Flores, and that's when my pulse started racing. I pulled up the clip again and watched it 3 more times, studying every angle. Even his voice had this familiar rasp to it, like gravel under boots. I opened my camera and snapped a selfie. Held it up side by side with a paused frame of Danny. The resemblance wasn't just strong, it was impossible to ignore. We looked like twins born years apart. I scrolled his page. More videos, him fixing up an old Chevy Nova, joking about his terrible cooking skills, making vague comments about adoption records he couldn't access. The deeper I went, the more it felt like someone had lifted a mirror to my past and posted it online. I didn't want to overreact. Maybe it was a coincidence. Maybe I was being desperate, but that old ache in my chest, the one I'd carried since I was 12 and first found out I was adopted, came roaring back. I opened his most recent post and stared at the comments section. Hundreds of likes, hearts, you got this. Messages, and then I typed, hey. This might sound insane, but I think we might be related. Can we talk? I hovered over the send button, breath caught somewhere between my ribs, then I tapped it, 3 dots popped up, then stopped, then popped up again. My heart was pounding so loud I couldn't hear the wind anymore. Finally, a reply, wait. Where are you from? I typed back, Carson City. Adopted. Never knew my birth family either. This time, the dots came faster. I'm in Elko. Can we FaceTime? I didn't answer right away, because deep down, I already knew, this wasn't just some stranger online, this was blood, this was the beginning of a story my parents never wanted told, and I was about to rip it wide open. The diner off Route 50 was one of those places frozen in time, metal stools, faded wallpaper, and a jukebox that hadn't worked since the 80s. I chose a booth near the window, where I could see every car pulling in and out. My coffee sat untouched, going cold in the cup, then the door opened. He walked in wearing a worn denim jacket and scuffed boots. Same jawline. Same uneven gait. When he spotted me, we both just stared, no words, not at first, then he let out a half laugh. You weren't kidding. I stood. Neither were you. We sat across from each other like reflections in a warped mirror. I couldn't stop staring. Neither could he. The waitress came, poured him a coffee. He thanked her but didn't touch it either. I'm Danny, he said, I'm Lena. Silence again, then I pulled out a photo from my wallet, the only one I had from my adoption file. A blurry picture of a baby girl being held by a woman whose face was partially cut off. The woman wore a necklace with a sunburst pendant. Danny's hand trembled slightly as he reached into his jacket and pulled out something I hadn't expected, a sunburst pendant on a chain, tarnished and dulled with time. This was in my foster box, he said. No one ever knew where it came from. My throat tightened. That's her. That's our mom. He nodded, jaw clenched. I always thought I was crazy. But you're real. We started talking. About the gaps in our records. His file only started when he was 4. Mine began at 3. Neither had full birth certificates, just amended ones. Adoption paperwork that looked like it had been retyped, sections redacted, dates scribbled over. I tried to get answers when I turned 18, he said. Court said my file was sealed. No explanation. Same here, I said. Only name I got was the judge who signed off on it. Gerald Whitaker. Danny blinked. That's your last name? Yeah, I said. He's my grandfather. Or, he raised me. Anyway. He leaned back slowly, like the air had gone thin. That can't be a coincidence. It wasn't. We both knew that now. You said you remember someone taking you? I asked. He nodded. Flashbacks, maybe. A woman screaming. Me in a car seat. A man with white hair. Clipboard. Glasses. Smelled like aftershave and cigarettes. A cold chill passed through me. That was my grandfather. Down to the aftershave. What if we weren't adopted the way they said? I whispered. Danny looked out the window, eyes distant. What if we were taken? For the first time in years, the world tilted beneath my feet. This wasn't just family reunion. It was the start of a buried crime, and I had a feeling we'd only scratched the surface. We left the diner without touching our food. The truth sat heavier in our stomachs than any plate could. I drove back to Carson City, heart thudding the whole way, and by the time I pulled into my driveway, I already had a plan. If the past was buried, I was going to dig it up. The next morning, I went to the county courthouse, somewhere I'd avoided since high school civics class. I asked for my original adoption file, gave them my name, my case number, the date of placement. The woman behind the glass tapped on her keyboard, then paused, her eyes flicked up. Your file's sealed, she said. By court order. I figured, I said. Who signed it? She frowned, double-checked something, then leaned closer like she wasn't sure she should say it. Judge Gerald Whitaker. I felt the world narrow. Is there a way to open it? I asked. Only with a court petition, she said. Or a direct order from the judge who sealed it. He was retired. He was family. And he was hiding something. That night, I texted Danny, Lena, my file's sealed. Danny, mine too. Lena, Whitaker signed the order. Danny, I knew it. You think he forged something, Lena, or covered it up for someone else? Danny, I'll drive down tomorrow. We spread our files across my kitchen table the next afternoon. His foster care placement started in 2005. Mine in 2006. Both records had weird inconsistencies, missing intake notes, abrupt transfers, long gaps in case logs. There was no mention of a biological mother. No formal termination of parental rights. Just a signature. His name. Gerald J. Whitaker. He had the power to make it all disappear, I said, tapping the seal on the last page of my file. Danny nodded. And he did. I opened a drawer and pulled out the only photo I had of Whitaker from back then, me sitting on his lap at a 4th of July picnic, his white hair ruffled by the wind, that smug smile frozen in time. He always acted like he saved me, I whispered. Like I owed him. Danny looked down at the documents again. What if this wasn't just about us? That thought sat between us like a loaded gun. Later that night, I snuck into the back room of my grandfather's house. The one he called his law library. He kept it locked, but I knew where he hid the spare key. In the cabinet, behind volumes of old legal codes, I found a thin file labeled simply, Martinez, R. My breath caught. Inside were photos of a young woman, bruised. Crying. Police reports. Witness statements, and a note in his handwriting, unfit. No hearing needed. Quiet resolution. But something was off, the dates were wrong. The photos. They were older than me or Danny. Staged, forged, I didn't know. But I knew one thing, my grandfather didn't just seal our past, he'd rewritten it, and now, we were going to open every locked door he thought would stay shut forever. I don't know what I expected from the house. Maybe something gutted and overgrown, with broken windows and tumbleweeds creeping up the porch. But when we pulled off the highway outside Winnemucca and followed the GPS down a dusty service road, what we found was worse. The house wasn't destroyed. It was preserved, like someone had kept it waiting, 2 stories, pale stucco faded by the Nevada sun. The shutters were peeling, the mailbox rusted, but the roof looked solid. The screen door creaked slightly in the wind. There were no signs of squatters, no graffiti, no boarded-up windows. Just silence. Danny parked the truck and killed the engine. "You sure this is it?" I pulled the folded deed from my backpack and read the name again. Rosa Inez Martinez, yeah. It's hers. He exhaled slowly. "Feels like a ghost lives here." "Maybe she does." We stepped out. My boots crunched against gravel. Danny moved ahead and tried the door. Locked, of course. But around back, the kitchen window was cracked open just enough to slip through. He boosted me up. Inside, the air was stale but clean. The kind of stale you get from years of emptiness, not rot. Dust coated every surface, but there was no mold, no water damage, no signs of decay. It wasn't abandoned. It was maintained. The fridge was unplugged. The stove covered. Furniture draped in white sheets. There was a calendar on the wall. From 2007. Circled in red, May 12th, final visit. I pulled the sheet from a nearby table and found a stack of unopened mail, all addressed to Rosa. All forwarded from different P.O. boxes. And beside them, a ledger. Meticulous records of property tax payments, all signed with the initials GJW. Danny stood frozen by the stairs, staring at a framed photo. "Lena," he whispered. I walked over and saw it. 3 people in front of this same house. A woman in her 20s, long dark hair, eyes bright with pride. A boy on her hip. A baby girl in a sling across her chest. "That's us," he said. "It has to be." "And that's her," I breathed, "our mother, not unfit. Not a ghost. Not some horror story buried by court orders, a real woman. Who lived here. Who fought to keep her kids, and someone, my grandfather, made sure she lost." I opened a drawer in the nearby desk and found a dusty folder labeled guardianship petition, denied. Her signature was on every page. Alongside a judge's stamp that made my stomach twist. Whitaker. He'd blocked her at every turn, and he'd kept this house on life support. Quietly paying taxes through shell trusts, making sure no one else claimed it, so no one would ever find what we just had. Danny sat down slowly, staring at the walls like they were bleeding memories. "She never abandoned us," he said. "No," I whispered. "But someone made damn sure it looked like she did." And I swore right then, we would find her, even if it meant burning down every lie along the way. That night, after we left the house in Winnemucca, we got a motel room off the highway. The kind of place with buzzing lights and cigarette burns on the comforter. I didn't care. My brain wouldn't stop spinning. I sat on the edge of the bed, clutching the photo of our mother like it might dissolve if I blinked too long. Danny hadn't said much since we left. He sat by the window, elbows on knees, staring into the black Nevada night. Then, softly, he said, "I remember her voice." I looked up. He didn't turn around. Just kept looking through the glass, like he was watching something unfold in the dark. "She was crying. Screaming, really. My arms were around your shoulders. You were in pajamas with stars. You were crying too, but not loud. Like you were already used to it." His voice cracked. "I think we were in a hallway. Blue carpet. I remember holding onto a doorframe. I felt a tremor start in my hands." "How old were you?" 3, maybe 4. It's fuzzy. But there was a man there. Tall. White hair. He had a clipboard. Wore a suit that didn't fit right. He picked me up like I was nothing. Smelled like cologne and cigarettes. My heart dropped. You remember his voice? I asked. Danny finally looked at me. He said, "Don't worry, son. You're going to a better place." I stood up too fast, knocking over the motel ice bucket. It clattered to the floor, but I didn't care. That was him, I whispered. That was Whitaker. Danny nodded slowly. He was the one who took us. Not foster care. Not some overwhelmed system. Him, the man who raised me. The man who called himself my family. I grabbed the adoption files from my bag, flipping to the legal stamp again. Emergency placement ordered by Judge Gerald Whitaker. He hadn't saved me, he'd stolen me. He made it all look clean, I said, pacing now. Falsified reports, sealed files, blocked her guardianship petitions. That house wasn't abandoned, it was buried. Danny didn't speak for a long time. Then he said, "What kind of man takes kids from their mother? And lies to their face for years?" I didn't have an answer. All I knew was that I couldn't sleep under his roof ever again. I couldn't eat another dinner at that long wooden table where he smiled like he hadn't erased a woman from existence. We weren't just adoptees, we were proof of a crime, and now that we'd cracked the first layer, I had a feeling there were more secrets underneath, uglier ones, and for the first time, I wasn't scared of what we'd find. I was ready to burn the whole lie to the ground. The address came from a record Danny found buried in a county medical file, under the name Isabel Reyes. New name. New life. But the date of birth matched Rosa Inez Martinez. The handwriting on the intake form looked familiar too. I compared it to the guardianship petition from the Winnemucca house. It was her. She was alive, and living in Ely, Nevada. We drove through long stretches of desert silence. The kind where even your thoughts echo. Danny barely spoke. I gripped the wheel until my knuckles ached, every part of me braced for disappointment. For the chance that we were wrong. That this woman wasn't her. That it would all fall apart again. We pulled into a quiet neighborhood just outside Ely. Dusty trailers, overgrown weeds, the smell of sagebrush in the hot air. At the end of the block was a modest single-story home with faded shutters and plastic sunflowers in the window box. I checked the name on the mailbox, Reyes. Danny looked at me. "You ready?" "No," I knocked anyway. A minute passed. Then too, the door opened, and there she was. Her hair was shorter, grayer. Her frame smaller than I expected. But her eyes, those deep, tired eyes, froze me in place. I saw my own sadness in them. "Danny's too, can I help you?" she asked, her voice quiet, guarded. I swallowed. My throat felt raw. "Are you Isabel Reyes?" She hesitated. "Yes." Danny stepped forward. "You used to be Rosa Martinez." Her breath caught. The screen door creaked as she gripped it tighter. "You look like him," she said softly, eyes on Danny. Then she looked at me. Her lip trembled. "And you look like me." She didn't ask questions. Just opened the door. Inside, her home was warm and clean. There were no pictures on the walls. No signs of children. Just knitted blankets, thrift store lamps, and silence. "I was told you were dead," I said quietly. She sat across from us, a steaming cup of chamomile in her shaking hands. "I've died many times," she said. "But not the way they told you." Danny leaned forward. "Why didn't you come for us?" She looked down. "I did." Rosa, no, Mama, showed us a file she kept hidden in a cookie tin. Letters she wrote to the court. One every month for 5 years. All returned. All unopened. She had filed appeals. Petitions. "Please," no one listened. "I never gave up," she whispered. But Whitaker had power. He said I was unstable. That I had no job, no home. He showed the court pictures. Bruises that weren't mine. Medical reports I never saw. And then, you were gone. Danny's eyes brimmed with tears. I reached for her hand. "We're here now." She nodded slowly, tears falling. "You came back, she said, voice cracking. My babies found me. No one had believed her, but we would, and now we knew the truth. We weren't abandoned, we were stolen. And justice was no longer a hope, it was a promise. He still lived in that same big house on the hill, the one with the wraparound porch and the flagpole that whined in the wind. Judge Gerald Whitaker, my grandfather, retired, respected, untouchable. Or so he thought. Danny and I parked just beyond the fence line, out of view. I could feel the old fear bubbling in my chest. Every childhood memory in that house suddenly turned sour. Sunday dinners. Lawn games. That carved wooden chair at the head of the table. The one he always sat in, like a king. You ready? Danny asked. I nodded. Let's finish this. We walked up the porch together. I didn't knock. I opened the door and stepped inside like I used to, only this time. I wasn't coming for dinner. He looked up from his reading chair, startled but not surprised. Lena, he said, standing. What are you doing here? Danny stepped in behind me. Whitaker's eyes narrowed. And you must be the TikTok boy. His tone turned bitter, like he'd tasted something foul. We know the truth, I said, pulling my phone from my pocket and hitting record. We found our mother. We found the house. The petitions you buried. The lies you told. Whitaker's jaw tightened, but he didn't sit down. He walked slowly to the fireplace, the same place he used to tell stories with a glass of bourbon in his hand. You don't understand what was happening back then, he said carefully. Those children, you were going to be lost in the system. I gave you lives. Futures. Danny scoffed. You sold us to your friends. Whitaker didn't flinch. I placed children with families who had the means to raise them right. You stole us, I snapped. You forged documents, sealed court files, destroyed our mother's life. He turned to me, eyes sharp. She was unstable. Emotional. Unfit. You made sure she looked that way. He said nothing. We found everything, Danny added. The trust accounts. The payment records. You kept the house under your name so no one else could claim it. For a moment, he looked older than I'd ever seen him. His shoulders slumped slightly. His mask slipped. You wouldn't understand the pressure, he said, voice low. Politicians. Law firms. I owed favors. I cut deals. You were collateral. That word hit like a punch, collateral. He turned to me again, as if pleading. But look at you. Look at what you've become. You had opportunities. And now we're taking them back, I said. Everyone you tried to erase. Danny stepped forward. We're pressing charges. And the world's already watching. I showed him the screen. Live recording. Thousands watching. Whitaker didn't speak again. He just stood there, defeated by the truth. As we walked out of the house for the last time, I didn't feel fear. I felt power, not revenge, justice, and this was just the beginning. I didn't expect it to go viral. I just needed the world to hear what had happened. To us, to Rosa, to the other children lost in that silent machine. I posted the clip the same night we confronted Whitaker. Just 90 seconds. Me and Danny, sitting side by side, holding up the same childhood photo. A brief voiceover, we were stolen. Lied to. Raised apart. But we found each other. And the truth. He was the judge. She was our mother. She never gave us up. The post didn't just take off, it detonated. Within 24 hours, it had over 3 million views. The comments flooded in, people sharing their own adoption horror stories, reporters digging into Whitaker's history, strangers demanding justice. By the second day, we were getting calls from journalists, state officials, even attorneys. By the third day, the governor's office had issued a public statement. We take these allegations seriously and will be launching a full-scale investigation into former Judge Gerald Whitaker and his role in private adoption placements during his tenure. That was the moment it became real. Bigger than us, Danny and I were asked to testify at the inquiry. We gave them everything: the files, the forged medical records, the sealed petitions, the trust documents linked to the Winnemucca property. Every paper trail Whitaker thought would stay buried, we dug up and brought into the light, and Rosa, our mother, finally had her voice back. She gave her first interview to a local station out of Ely. I watched it from the motel bed, tears slipping down my cheeks. I never gave up on them, she said, holding the photo of me and Danny. Even when no one listened, I kept lighting candles. I knew one day they'd find me. For once, someone believed her. That week, more families came forward. Former social workers. A woman from Reno who recognized Whitaker's name on her own sealed file. A man from Las Vegas who said his brother disappeared from foster care in 2009 and was never seen again. It became a reckoning. We weren't just a story anymore, we were the match. The trial came 6 months later. Whitaker sat in the courtroom in a gray suit that suddenly looked too big on him. His lawyers tried to spin it, called it poor oversight, misguided benevolence, complicated law. But the evidence was clear. So were the faces of the victims. He was charged with obstruction of justice, conspiracy, and multiple counts of falsifying public records. Others in the system were named. 2. Quiet players in a scheme that spanned over a decade. He didn't cry when the verdict came. But I did, not because I felt sorry, because for the first time in my life, the system that tore us apart was being held accountable. This wasn't just justice for me or Danny. It was for all the ghosts they tried to erase. The plaque bearing his name came down in silence. It had hung for years in the courthouse lobby. Honorable Judge Gerald J. Whitaker, a tribute in polished brass. Now it lay on the floor behind a janitor's cart, turned backward, face down. Just another piece of metal. His legacy was gone, disbarred. Stripped of all titles and honors. The man who once decided the fate of hundreds of families now avoided the press, tucked away in a private care facility where no one would look him in the eye. He never apologized. But it didn't matter, because the world knew the truth now. Rosa stood beside me on the courthouse steps that day, shoulders back, head high, the Nevada sun catching the tears in her eyes as reporters shouted questions and flashes lit the crowd. She didn't speak much. She didn't have to. The state's official apology was read aloud in chambers the week before. Wrongfully separated from her children. Documents sealed inappropriately. Lack of oversight that enabled judicial abuse. Cold words. But powerful ones, and on the record, Rosa was cleared. Publicly. Legally. Irrevocably, she was no longer a missing name in an old file. She was our mother again. Danny and I moved her back into the house in Winnemucca, the one Whitaker had hidden for years under shell trusts and tax tricks. We painted the shutters. Pulled weeds. Let the light in again. She kept the same sunburst pendant hung over the fireplace, and next to it, our first photo together as adults, me, Danny, and Rosa on that porch, holding hands like we'd always known how. We lost years. But we had time left, and we weren't done. The TikTok that started everything? It's now a page called At From Lost to Found, dedicated to helping others uncover sealed records and question the official stories they were handed as children. Thousands of people follow it now, some just curious, others desperate to find pieces of their own missing past. Danny handles most of the messages, I handle the research. Rosa sends handwritten letters to anyone who shares a story like ours. Together, we're turning something broken into something that matters. Sometimes, I still wake up in the middle of the night, heart racing like I'm back in Whitaker's house, afraid to speak, afraid to know. But then I remember, I did speak, we both did, and the silence that followed was filled with truth. We were never abandoned, we were never lost, we were taken, but now we're found, and we're just getting started.